Seconds out, welcome to the show with boxer Dan Slaney, Sheffield Wednesday supporter, as those who've seen his previous appearance on this programme will recall, and he's keeping Kevin Gage in order on the sofa this evening. Kevin, an old friend of the show. I think this is your hat-trick of appearances, Kevin, your third one, I've got a feeling.
I think so. Do I get a prize?
We'll keep that quiet. You get an extra pint after the show. Ex-Sheffield United, of course, and now a distinguished pundit with a weekly column in the Sheffield Star, which makes two of us. We'll compare notes after the show. And what we're going to talk about, obviously, primarily, apart from Dan's big fight at the Doncaster Dome this weekend, is the transfer window. Big confession, first of all, before we even get into that, from Kevin Gage here. What were you doing last night?
Well, I can't lie, because I was watching the Great British Bake Off, of course, which is essential viewing on a Wednesday evening. So the transfer deadline just did actually get in the way, to be honest.
Can I tell you something? I was watching it as well. Well, half watching it. Mrs. Biggs had got it on as she always does.
No, it's not on in my house, unfortunately, thankfully.
It's all right, really. Unbelievable success of that programme. Right, we're not here to talk about baking cakes. Mind you, we'd probably get a bigger audience if we did, if we brought a mixing bowl in and whatever. We are going to talk about the melting pot, as it were, of the deadline day and the transfer window as a whole. In the whole of the summer window, the two Sheffield clubs made a total of 20 signings between them. Sheffield United made 12, your Sheffield Wednesday made 8. You'll claim an edge because Sheffield Wednesday didn't lose anybody.
Yeah, I think that was the big thing for us this year. And I mean, obviously, if you look on the social media, you'll see a lot of fans saying, we wanted Rhodes or, a big name signing. You always do on deadline day. But I think if you look at the whole window, we've brought in 8, is it?
8 players,
brought in 8, round about 10, 12 million, and lost no one of serious note. I think the big thing for us, keeping Westwood, keeping Hutchinson, Lees, Forestieri, obviously the big talking point. So that, I think it was, good for us to kind of keep hold of what we got, just as much as it was to bring in the one or two.
And that can be overlooked and it can be forgotten amid all the almost like pent-up frustration, or the people willing Jordan Rhodes to arrive at Hillsborough last night. It can become a bit fantasy, can't it, Kevin, at that stage?
Yeah, it does get a bit surreal because names are bandied about here, there, and everywhere, aren't they? And you have to be realistic with your club's ambitions. And fair play to Sheffield Wednesday, they're now competing in transfer-wise at a very high level, and they're after these good quality players.
So, even Jordan Rhodes as well, because
Rhodes is excellent quality. Yeah,
I mean, half the championship was clustered around trying to get him on loan. I'm absolutely convinced from sources that Sheffield Wednesday were at that particular race, that they inquired about him, but it won't be overlooked. He hasn't gone anywhere. So Middlesbrough wouldn't sanction that type of deal. I'm sure that Wednesday and many others tried very hard to... I mean, loan fees these days can be £4 million for a season.
I would expect him to move, in the next window, or even, as you say, on loan somewhere, in the not too distant future. Because if he's not getting a game at Middlesbrough, he's a quality player and he will want to play football. Yeah. And that's what professional footballers want to do. That's why they move about.
Yeah. Well, we'll come to the details, the nuts and bolts of who United have brought in, what you make of it, and who's left with you both as time goes on. But just briefly, by way of introduction to your fight this Saturday evening at Doncaster Dome, you're on a bill there. Incredibly, until I think maybe today, you didn't know who you were fighting.
Well, I caught word around about 3 weeks ago that there was a change of opponent, and I'd had a name thrown at me, but sometimes, it can be right down to the week of the fight.
And who is it?
A few days before. A young man called Bryn Wayne. I think he's from Somerset, somewhere down south.
You're very vague about it.
Yeah, because... two things really. Number one, I find out a name, or I get past a name from my manager, Steffi Bull, but I don't really want to know too much about him. Just a name's enough. I know I'm going to be getting in there against. I know he's young. He's about 5'10", 5'11". Other than that, I don't really need to know too much.
Imagine going into a football match, Kevin, A, not being sure who your opponent was, and B, not even bothering to watch him, or your manager not bothering to watch him.
Well, we spoke about this briefly, didn't we, before we came on, and it shows having huge confidence in your own ability, actually, because, you've got to be entirely sure of what you're about and what you're going to do, and you will get on top of your opponent. And this is coming from someone who knows nothing about boxing, by the way. I'm just talking about a sporting analogy, really.
Yeah.
I think, well, I've done my job, I've got myself in the best possible physical shape that I can be in for this fight, given, the camp that I've had. So I couldn't be any fitter. My weight's absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
So on the night, he's going to be exactly the same as me. I'm going to assume he's going to come in, he's going to be in the best shape that he can be in. Yeah. And we're both going to be there, and we're both going to want to win at the end of the day. So may the best man win, literally, and that's just the way that it's going to go. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to Saturday. It's been a lot of hard work over the last 10 weeks. So I'm ready. I'm excited now. It's going to be nice to get in and.
He's 5'10", so you're going to have a height advantage.
I think he's about 5'11". Yeah, I'm 6'3", probably 6'4" at a squeeze. So I'll have a height advantage, which will play. It's something I'm used to. I'm used to being quite tall and lean at the weight, so I can deduce from that a certain style. I have seen some small piece of footage on him, and I know the way that he fights generally, but not enough that I've sat and researched him. I know enough to know that it's a job that I can do.
Okay, we'll come back to the fight later and the prospects for it. I'm taking it that Kevin, he's not going to be joining us for the statutory fee of 3 pints of bitter after the programme, which is going to save me a few bob, actually.
That's why you invited him on, Alan.
Yeah. I knew one of them was going to cost me. Him. Let's have a look at it first from Sheffield United's perspective then. It's been a summer of change anyway. The manager's changed. 12 players coming in. 9 of those have been permanent, 5 of those for a fee, and 3 loans. 2 significant departures. What do you make of the overall?
I think it's something that had to be done. I think Chris Wilder's gone down the exact correct route, for Sheffield United. Because it needed changing from last season, the culture of the club and the way the team was playing and the whole ethos of the club. And Chris Wilder's come in and he's stamped his authority on it. He's got the type of players that he wants and has proven to have gained success within the past. And I think we're a whole lot better squad for it. Obviously, I haven't seen half the players play and I don't know too much about them, but you get the kind of feeling knowing what Chris Wilder wants and the type of players he's signed previously and the type of teams he's put out in the pitch at Oxford and Northampton that have done well. I think they'll fit in nicely.
The table has yet to reflect all of this, of course, which I don't think entirely surprises you looking at your column in the Sheffield Star. I think you know that a lot of new players do take a while to bed in, although what a relief to beat Oxford though last week.
Yeah, obviously you can't help but look at the league table, although people say you shouldn't take any notice of it until 10, 12 games or something. It's human nature. You do look at the league table and we're just 5th bottom or something, and you look at it and it's not great reading, but you have to try and measure that because it's really not important at this stage of the season. Now I will say I'm not here to just defend the club and Chris and all the players, too much because we haven't played very well.
You'll lose your column.
It's as simple as that. We haven't played very well. We haven't gelled yet at all. And that's probably because we've had all this massive turnaround of players, and it's a new style of play. It's a bit more aggressive and positive and forward going, forward thinking maybe. So it does take time to settle down. Now, I'm not going to be sitting here, in February, March if we're 4th bottom, saying, it's all going to be all right in the end, because clearly it's not, and something needs to change.
Chris Wilder himself wouldn't expect you to say that. I think he'd be as hard on himself as any critic in that event. Although it does take 2 seasons, I think, you've got to allow. But just beyond that, people will always talk, along with all the positives about bringing players in, particularly, say, Keelan Lavery, it's always going to be controversial when a promising young player goes, and we've had 2 this summer. Che Adams at the start of it, a fee approaching 2 million to Birmingham, and a fee rising to 1.4 million with Dominic Calvert-Lewin joining Everton. So what's your take on those 2 deals? Were they inevitable?
Not inevitable, no, I don't think so. There were a few clubs sniffing about Shea last season. But Che Adams didn't have a very good season last season. He played a few games, 20 or so games, and got his goals, but he didn't play very well, I have to be honest. Maybe he was played out of position as striker. I'm not sure he's a striker. I think he's a wide man. But I think he'd reached a stage where maybe, it sounds silly, but maybe a move was good for him to give his career a bit of a jolt, a kickstart. The fee was a very, very good fee for Sheffield United. Very good fee.
Do you agree the same about Calvert-Lewin 1.4?
It's a completely different situation from Shea Adams, because Calvert-Lewin is completely unproven, even at League One level. If the one manager who does know him quite well is obviously Chris, because he had him at Northampton half the season. So he's seen him day in, day out and playing matches. But you can't really compare the two, because Calvert-Lewin, it's a gamble that Everton can financially take. I mean, it's 1.5 million, which is a drop in the ocean for Everton. You know, they get £80 million TV money this year without even opening their gates.
You would assume, though, that the money's right now, because obviously if Wilder's seen him obviously the end of the last season and this season, if he knows enough about him, you know, to accept that 1.4, you kind of get.
It's an amazing fee for someone who's 18 years old. And Sheffield United are not in the position as a club, or as a club, I should say, where they can put Calvert-Lewin in the first team and let him develop for the next 2 years. You know, we may be worth 3-4 million in 2 years. We haven't got time to put him and develop him. You know, we've got to get Sheffield United where they back into the Championship. Our focus is not on Dominic Calvert-Lewin creating a better player there. Our focus is on Sheffield United in general. You know.
Oh, well, I mean, certainly there's going to be a cynical response from some supporters because of the sheer volume of academy products over the years, who very sadly have been sold. And wouldn't you have just liked to have seen those take Sheffield United back to where they want to be?
In an ideal world, you could make a great team of Sheffield United academy players who've gone on to play for England and some of the top clubs. But you also have to consider the players' point of view, and put ourselves in Kyle Walker and Norton, or Loughton or Dominic Calvert-Lewin. They've got a chance of a lifetime to go to a Premiership club, and their wages will be quadrupled. You know, maybe whatever they're on. It's a fantastic opportunity, and you can't deny them that opportunity. To be honest,
you can't knock them out. Anybody in any sport, you know, you've got to be able to give them the chance to say, you know, in a sense, let the bird fly and you know, let it go to wherever it.
Providing, and this is what they've done in both cases, and applaud them for that. Providing you get good money and realistic money, and they seem to have done that. I mean, I wrote my column on this week. I'm detecting a sea change for the better in the running of the club, football-wise, behind the scenes, because I've been a great critic for a while of, to my mind, you don't need a technical committee. You trust a manager and a chief executive with a budget, and you get on with it. And I feel that there have been too many chiefs there for a while running football. I get the feeling now that Chris Wilder is content because he's been given his head, both on incomings and outgoings, and that to me is the way it should be. Do you detect the same thing?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I think Chris is a very experienced football manager. You know, he's had 700 games in charge of Halifax and Oxford and Northampton, and they're not big clubs, but they are still managing football clubs and football players and football teams. So he'll have built and sold and traded and done all this previously. So he knows exactly what he wants, and I don't think he would have took the job on any other terms, other than he needs his own people in position and he gets the final say on everything. There'll be technical analysts and a few people, you know, advising and looking at players and scouting around these days. But at the end of the day, the manager's word has to be the last word, and what he says goes.
And I think this evolves. I think from the start of Chris's reign, when he could see it from the inside, my observation would be that maybe things were taking a bit longer than they needed to. You know, maybe he said, look, I need this speeding up. And there has been a speeding up. They've brought 12 players in total, which is, you know, applause to the United board for realising that and doing that and trusting this manager for me. We'll talk about David Brooks, who's another young prospect from the academy who raised a lot of eyebrows among the crowd and among journalists the other night in the, was it Checkatrade Trophy or whatever? Whatever that trophy's called now, the EFL trophy. If some good came of it, certainly Brooks. Talk to you about that. But Dan, before we leave Sheffield Wednesday, and we'll continue with that in the second part, I think there's got to be perhaps a bit more realism. And I think a lot of supporters are more realistic about what's expected this season than that they might have been. Because people are saying, well, made the top 6, now we can go for top 2. It's going to be a tall order.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just an odd situation to be in, really, isn't it? Because obviously we were kind of nowhere for a long time. Then last season, effectively finishing 4th, if you like, behind Hull, obviously losing the playoff final. And then obviously you think, well, if you can finish 4th, then this season we should be looking for either a playoff final win or better, and then obviously all of us looking for automatic promotion. But then when you measure that with these 4 teams come down from the Premiership with parachute payments and have got money to burn, and
there's
players,
about 6, I think, in the Championship are still on.
they're
these
still
parachute
receiving payments. It's just it's going to be a tough season.
I missed one out from my article in the Sheffield Telegraph today. I think somebody, Mark Hope, well done, Mark, pointed out Cardiff City as well. So there's yet another one, not a fancied team for promotion, but they're all on this. And when you look at Wednesday smashing their transfer record, apparently for Adam Reach, 5 million is the down fee. I think it rises to 7. It's a long time since they've had anything approaching that. I think it was Paolo Di Canio. But you still look at Aston Villa paying £15 million, rising to 15 million, for Jonathan Codier of Bristol City. That blows everybody out of the water, didn't it?
Well, the last time Aston Villa got relegated was 1986-87 season, and I signed for them the following season. So my first season, Aston Villa, I actually went down a division to play for Aston Villa in the division they are in now, and we got immediate promotion that year. And we didn't sign any £1 million players to do that. Graham Taylor signed strong, solid, hopefully decent quality players. Hopefully I was one of them. And
possibly.
and that's how he achieved it. But these days, Robert Di Matteo has come in, Steve Clark, and they're just going to throw money at it. It's as simple as that. That's how they think they're going to get success.
Yeah, Newcastle have got loads, although they've balanced it off with sales. But there's loads of big spending in that league.
I think to Wednesday's credit as well is, I mean, obviously since the beginning of summer, they've brought in 8 players, around about 10 or 12 million, but they've been smart with their acquisitions as well. They've not been just throwing money willy-nilly at players that are provisionally out of reach. You almost might say, unless you can throw 10 million in their direction. And the key, as I said earlier, the key for us is that we've not lost players.
I think it's about 10 million that they spent on fees, but the key is the wages have gone up to 30,000 plus a week, at the ceiling. And might even have to rise even further in the January window to get that one key player. And I'm sure that Jordan Rhodes talk will come back. I know it bores people, but you can't not be keen or at the races there, can you?
Well, they're amazing figures when you talk about these figures. I mean, it's mind-blowing, really, to see where Wednesday. Well, we can use the parallel of Wednesday United. I mean, a couple of seasons ago, we were kind of level pegging. And now Wednesday are talking about, look at him grinning. They're talking about £30,000 a week and all these, £1 million transfers, and Sheffield United are making a deliberate ploy to cut their cloth accordingly and to try and reduce, this horrendous wage bill still in League One and on these type of expensive players. We're trying to do it a different way.
It's almost like the roles have reversed in a sense, because obviously financially you have been struggling. We've obviously in a much better position now, and it's only probably 6 or 7 years ago we were having to ship players out because we needed the money. And then obviously you're talking about Shea Adams earlier, and then the young lad Lewin that's just gone out as well. So it's
people say where's the money gone, but some of those 12 players have cost fees. They've all cost wages. Last season's wage bill was £6 million or thereabout, I think.
We're of course still paying off ex-players as well, or not still paying off. But we've had to pay people to leave, which is a strange situation. But
and the winger. Forget
Wolford,
and that's dead money really. That's had to go out. So you kind of do understand the economics a bit more. In the second half, James Gregg will join us to talk about everything else. A busy sporting scene at the moment. I think the ice hockey boys at Sheffield Steelers getting their season moving. Sheffield Sharks. Basketball, we're going to have the captain in the studio in a week or two to talk about their prospects. There's loads more, but also talking about your big fight, Doncaster Dome on Saturday evening, and more Blades and more Owls here with Kevin Gage. So I hope in about 5 minutes' time you can rejoin us. See you then. Bye.